Hill, welcome. Salute.
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 Good to see you, my man, as usual.
Good to see you, my man. Cheers. Cheers. Here's to you. Here's to you, Steve. Skull. Skull. Is it skull?
Skull.
Yeah, cheers. All that stuff.
Yeah, we need some kind of like a tribute greeting like the Romans or the Vikings would have. We need a chinwag greeting.
Morituri te salutant. We who are about to die salute you.
Yes, that's a good one.
That's what the gladiators used to say.
Can we co-opt that?
Sure. I don't think there's any. I think the statute of limitation, what is it? The not statute of limitations.
the copyright?
Copyright. Whatever you copy, there's no copyright infringement on that.
Yeah, I think the stakes are a little lower in the chinwag than those. We're not about to die in the chinwag.
All right, so maybe that's extreme. We'll have to come up with something, though. Maybe our listeners can send in a greeting.
Send in ideas, preferably in Latin.
Yeah, preferably in Latin. That would be, something, I mean, in a different language could be fun. That would be good. We should have something to sort of start things off. I like it.
I think we do need something bold.
Yeah. Mahalo. Mahalo is always a good one. Mahalo, which is peace, right? I think is
it? I've heard it, but I didn't. Mahalo.
Yeah. From Hawaii. Mahalo. Speaking about sending things in, we have yet another couple of letters.
Yes. Our fans and listeners always sending us great stuff. We read it all, and then we get to read some of it.
Indeed. And I believe you have one to delight us, Steve, right off the bat here.
Something short and sweet from
Here we go.
Billy C.
Got it.
And so Billy C says, he doesn't say where he's from. No matter. But if you do write in, it's kind of fun to know where you're from. So maybe include your city.
I should know where you are.
All right. He says, I'm a newcomer to Chinwag, and I'm wondering if I could get a message to Paul Giamatti.
Uh-oh.
Wait a second,
I
Billy
know.
C. What about me?
What about
I
Steve?
take umbrage. Billy.
No, listen. Yeah, I know. Billy, well, it's happening. You're getting it as well.
Okay, he says, I've been covering UFOs. I've been covering UFOs since 1980, first as a newspaper reporter and lately in a blog. Given his interest in the subject, I'm wondering how he'd like to see the phenomenon framed on the big screen. Oh, I see. You were kind of more relevant for this. So it's a question about
You're
the
a movie
screen.
guy. You enjoy movies.
For all the blockbuster themes and CGI, I'm thinking our reckoning with this reality might ultimately engage more solemn, interior moments, maybe not unlike 2011's Another Earth. Just curious. Hollywood's gotten a lot of mileage out of the bang.
Interesting.
But what if it's more like a whimper? Cheers, Billy C.
That's kind of interesting. So what if it was more of a kind of, that's interesting. So what is he saying? Sort of like
solemn, interior, like a Kubrick kind of thing.
Like a Kubrick kind of thing. I didn't see Another Earth, but I gather it's great. Did you see that movie?
I did not see Another Earth. No.
I mean, but it's interesting. What would it be if it was interior? You're still going to probably, would you want something with no special effects at all would be kind of cool. Nothing special effecty at all would be kind of cool, or else just really simple practical effects, or something that's entirely, I mean, that'd be interesting. There's a movie called Communion. Have you ever seen this movie, Communion, which is based on the Whitley Strieber? Yeah. There's a movie from the 80s. I love this movie. It is peculiar. And it's got Christopher Walken, who
I have
is
not
like
seen it, but I've heard of it.
I recommend it. I mean, he's like a special effect in and of himself, Christopher Walken in this thing. And he plays Whitley Strieber. And at the end of it, it gets into literally seeing all these weird creatures and stuff like that, and it's very well done and very strange. But up until that point, none of it is literal in any way. And it's all sort of, it's quite spooky and jarring because he's really great. I mean, as you can imagine, his sense of kind of psychic disturbance that he's encountering these things is intense and is jarring. And he's so strange. And it's like, and he conveys a real sense that something strange is happening to him, and the other actors in it too. And it'd be interesting to have something that's along the lines. Well, there's also, I mean, I'm talking about movies that exist. There's a really great television movie that was done of the Betty and Barney Hill abduction.
Oh, you were telling me about
in the
this.
70s that I remember seeing as a kid, and then I watched it again not too long ago. It was on.
Is James
YouTube.
Earl Jones?
James Earl Jones and what's her name? Estelle Parsons, I think, is a great actress, still alive, real actor studio actress. She plays Betty. And a great character actor named Barnard Hughes plays the psychiatrist.
And we should say, though, before you tell that story, just for people who don't know, that's one of the earliest abduction cases.
It's kind of the original one, kind of, isn't it? Isn't it? I mean, there might have been ones.
To my understanding.
But it's, to mine too. It's one of the most celebrated ones. And it kind of sets a template for a lot of it, too. To sort of like, and it's this couple in New Hampshire, I think, and they were abducted. According to
on the road,
briefly.
driving their
they
car.
They had missing time, and they were driving late at night in New Hampshire. And that movie has sort of, when they do some of the hypnosis sessions, it goes into some literal showing of things happening. But one of the best parts of that movie is James Earl Jones recounting his with great fear and trembling, encountering these things. And I think you really just basically see him talking about it. And it's so disturbing how upset he gets. He's fantastic in it. He's amazing in it. And the way it conveys this, complete shattering of a person, this completely worldview shattering
but
thing.
But no special effects.
No, there's not. No, I think it's just him doing it. And that's pretty cool to do that kind of thing. But I don't know. I mean, it'd be cool to have something where there's nothing.
Yeah, I like that idea.
There's nothing but people reacting. It'd be really, really cool.
There are some films that really keep you guessing and never really settle it to you, like that Jacob's Ladder. Like you're never sure.
Yeah, that's true.
What's happening, if it's in his mind or not.
Yep.
And then I was thinking too that like there are very philosophical science fiction UFO films.
There's a great alien invasion contact movie. It's a Russian movie called Stalker. Have you ever seen Stalker?
Oh, that's Tarkovsky,
right? Tarkovsky.
Yes.
Andrei Tarkovsky is this great
film.
Soviet-era filmmaker.
So good.
And that has no special effects in it. And you never see aliens or anything in it. But the premise of that is that these guys go into this sort of zone some event has happened that involved aliens that has left this kind of zone that this forbidden zone for you to go in and out of, in which all kinds of strange psychic sort of things happen to you if you go in and out. And there's guys who have become sort of expert guides who will take you in.
Yes.
Who I think are called the stalkers, who have to go in to sort of lead you around. It's all very rudimentary. It's all very there's no technology, there's nothing. That's a really cool movie, which nothing like that is seen.
There's another one that just came out recently where these people go into a zone. When you were describing this, you reminded me of it. And they lose time. That's kind of an interesting premise where they just sort of come out of it and they realize they've been there for weeks. There's signs that they've been living there for weeks, but they don't know why. And that kind of stuff is really cool too.
What's interesting too that he says is not a bang, but a whimper. And the idea maybe that like the encounter is incredibly... maybe the aliens are very underwhelming in some way. That could be interesting. That they're very
Is that all there is?
Yeah, they're kind of frail and sad, and they're sort of like they need our help, and they're kind of weak. And I mean, that movie Alien Nation sort of, have you ever seen that Alien Nation where the aliens come and they end up just getting sort of assimilated into human society,
sort of
like
a metaphor for race relations in a way,
they
right?
do.
Yes,
there's that, which is an interesting way of dealing with it. But what if they were just these kind of I suppose E.T. does that in some way, doesn't it? But it's like
that's true.
This sort of frail creature that's not sort of...
I think the assumption is that like any creature that would get this far across galaxies to the Earth would somehow be superior to us. But you're right, it would be fun to mess with that assumption and just make them like they accidentally got here. They don't really know jack shit.
There's a book that I read. The fuck was it called? Shit, I can't remember. It's a science fiction novel. Maybe people will know what I'm talking about. It's a long time ago I read this, where the aliens come and they smell horrible and they're really friendly and they want to, but they smell so bad that nobody can deal with them and nobody wants to deal with them. And it's all about a guy who's like a Hollywood publicist, has to come up with a way to make the aliens palatable to human beings.
Great.
I can't remember what the hell the name of the book is. I read it a long time ago. Anyway, but it's a cool idea. I mean, and then to somehow make it, we were talking in another segment about making it psychic. Somehow the whole thing is just psychic.
The whole thing is happening in the head.
inside of you in some way. That'd be cool.
It's very hard to, I feel like there's this problem in film. You tell me, because you've worked inside film, but like whenever I see people trying to represent the life of the mind,
yeah.
There are these corny stereotypes, like the guy sits at a typewriter and that, you know what I mean? Like there's just these like mechanisms because you can't show the mind.
No, you can't. Well, I mean, or it becomes, well, it's always that thing of how do you represent a dream on film? Like, and and you would think it's a realm in which the best possible realm to represent a dream, and yet it never quite works.
Yeah.
I can't really think of too many things that give you, I mean, unless it's just, I mean, those Tarkovsky movies feel a little dreamlike after a while, even though that they're not literally trying to show you a dream. It's just the sort of poetry of them, the sort of ambiguity and the poetry of them makes them feel dreamlike. But in some way, they always kind of feel a little silly. And to represent sort of weird psychic, it's like altered states, which is great. I love altered states. Yeah. But it gets a little silly and psychedelic and stuff. Yeah, it can feel a little silly. You just have to go with it. But I don't know how you could do something without having some sort of special effect in it, you know? If you're going to do something with aliens, unless you're never going to represent them in some way.
I wonder if there's like some old, like, those great Twilight Zone and Night Gallery and that stuff. I wonder if they ever did, because they didn't have much budget. So they have to think of these creative ways, you know?
Yeah, so you would have that kind of thing, yeah. And certainly like, like the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers and stuff. You didn't really have to do much of anything because everybody looks like a human being. So it's
That's a great film,
because everybody just looks like a human being. And you don't need to do
The remake of that is scary too. The Donald Sutherland one.
That's one of my favorite movies. That's a great movie. That's a genuinely scary
Does
movie.
it hold up well? Because I haven't seen it in ages.
It does. It totally holds up. It falls apart a little bit in the last sort of 15 minutes of it or so. It gets a little bit, but up until then, man, it is superior. That movie is really freaky.
That's why I think like when you bring up Tarkovsky and that kind of Russian approach, and it's almost like in Hollywood, they feel like, okay, we weirded you out, but now we have to, the last act has to be like a bludgeon over the head and super dramatic and really kind of narratively obvious on the nose.
Well, it's hard to tell those stories because it has to keep up in the ante. I mean, it's my problem all the time with like horror movies or haunted house things. Like, because you have to keep up in the ante. It has to get crazier and crazier.
Right.
It doesn't have to, but it's generally how people will play it out. You know what I mean? You kind of have, because always the best part of those movies is about the first 2/3.
I agree. I agree.
And then they overplay their hand because you have to go. It's the rare one that executes it well the entire thing.
Everyone shits the bed in the last
Everybody
act.
shits the bed in a way because it's like, but what are you going to do? Yeah, it's tricky. It's a really tricky form. It's interesting. That thing. How do you solve that problem? I don't know.
I wonder if it's, are the execs, are the suits thinking, well, Americans just need some resolution, whereas a lot of European film and Russian film, they're like, let's just leave it dangling.
It's okay if we leave it dangling. Yeah, which I actually think is the best way to convey the uncanny and the sort of to really convey that sense of horror or the uncanny and stuff is to leave it unresolved.
Yes.
Because then you're just like, then you're leaving people in this state of suspense or you're leaving them. And then but people fucking hate that.
Yes.
People fucking hate that.
I love it. You love it.
Yeah,
There's a certain
I do.
personality that's attracted to it.
If you can do it anywhere, you can do it in a horror movie, maybe. You know what I mean? But it's like, and not just, Jason rises again with the machete out of the fucking lake.
No, that's the cheap way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cheap way to do it. But something that leaves you sort of, it's a real trick doing those well. It's why, when they work, they really work so well. Because if you make a good one, It
reminds me, one of the first times you and I talked, we were bonded over this similar phenomenon, which is we were talking about how fun it is when you have something that's like, you don't know what it's for, and you don't know how it started. You're just in the middle of it. We were saying it's like a gizmo, like it's an object and you don't know what it was made for and you don't know how it began. You just found it, but it's got all these interlocking parts that move around. And that's sort of like how I like cinema too, is to like just be in it.
A good story. Yeah, right. Yeah, you're in the gizmo. And gizmo, totally. Yeah, well, we were talking about, I like sort of those real puzzle mysteries, those like locked room mysteries and stuff where really the point is this kind of puzzle that you have to figure out like that, which I don't know. I guess that would work it does work on film too. I suppose film's a good place to do that too, but it's like a kind of intellectual puzzle. And it's like, yeah, that's cool. We have another one that we can read here.
Yes, let's do it.
If I may. This is from Charles. Charles, here we go. He says, I'm a big fan of the podcast, but I have to take umbrage. Uh-oh.
Oh, whoa.
With something you said in the Sarah Vowell Part 2 episode. Parkland is a good movie. That's a movie that I was in about the JFK assassination.
That's right.
Yeah, and in particular, your performance as Mr. Zapruder really captured the man's conflict with having witnessed such an unspeakable event, not as a regular bystander, but through the focused lens of his camera. You did amazing bringing those emotions to light. That's very nice of you, sir. Just wanted to brighten your day. Chip in Texas, Charles. Chip.
Thank you, Chip.
But here's the kicker. P.S. My mother worked with one of the ER nurses on site that day at Parkland. That's the hospital in Dallas where they took the president and Connolly and all those people. She told a story of the staff all knowing as soon as Kennedy arrived that he was dead, but very quickly the doctors and nurses were gathered into a room by a man in the typical conspiracy theorist black suit and fedora and told that the president was alive, that they, the staff, were doing everything in their power to save him, and that if any of them said otherwise to anyone, quote, people have a way of disappearing, unquote.
Whoa.
My mom's always been a fairly good judge of people, and she told me she had no doubt her colleague was telling the truth.
Wow.
I don't doubt that. I don't really doubt it. I mean, I suppose at first damage control was like, you don't say a word about any of this, right? Yeah. I buy that entirely. I buy that 100%, right? That they would send somebody in to just be like, nothing to see here, guys. Yeah.
Totally believable to me as well.
Totally believable.
I actually think it might be justifiable too, because, and this is a little more controversial, but sometimes you do need to like put a good face on things until you figure out what you're going to do next,
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. That you can't really, that they're damage control. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's that sense of like, you can't let, you got to control the messaging, I suppose. It's not, there is to some extent, it's probably necessary sometimes. The lie is important to maintain. It's like the end of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, when he says to the woman, she says, what were my husband's last words? And he says, your name. He said, your name. When, of course, he said the horror, because he figures it's better to preserve the illusion. Now, that's one where he's leaving the woman permanently to have the illusion. This, presumably, they weren't going to try to completely hide that the president
hopefully
was
they
dead.
weren't going to keep it going.
I mean, you never know. Maybe they were going to try to keep it going. But this is interesting. This is interesting in light, too, of all this stuff that's happened recently with this guy who came out, this former Secret Service agent who is now well into his 80s, I think, right? Did you hear about this?
Tell that story.
Well, there's a guy who just came out. I think he has a book that just came out saying that, I can't remember the whole thing. This stuff gets so Byzantine and confusing
for me,
that I can't keep it totally straight. But that he discovered this, because there's this whole thing about how the Warren Commission concluded it was one bullet, that there was one shot fired and one bullet, the magic bullet, the single bullet that went through Kennedy, killed him and went into Connolly, is he the governor of Texas? I can't remember.
I think
got
so.
hit in the arm. It was this impossible trajectory for this bullet. And so this guy claims to have found a second bullet in the car, I think.
That's incredible,
that he
if that's
put
true.
it on the gurney. I can't remember where he put it. He put it on the gurney. The whole thing is very weird sounding because it's like, why didn't you tell people you found it? Why did you put it on the gurney? Why did you, and then somehow it fell. I don't know, some whole Byzantine thing, and that there were two, but it got lost or it got confused as one or something. But that this guy was confirming that there had been two shots, two bullets at least.
I mean, I suppose you don't act normal or right under such situations. So you could be doing really dumb stuff, But anyway, go on.
Yeah, no, I guess that's true. You could do shit that doesn't make any sense in the moment and stuff like that.
You're just freaked out.
Yeah, because you're so freaked out. But anyway, I mean, that's a whole thing lately. And I was telling you that when I was reading about this recently, I had never heard the whole theory that that there's the whole theory that JFK was shot by one of the Secret Service guys by accident.
Yeah, you told me that.
That there was a Secret Service guy in the car behind him, I think.
That's a theory.
And that there was some whole thing. The guy had an AR-15 that he was not acquainted with how to use, and he was hung over from the night before. This guy subsequently died.
So just an accident.
Yeah, so and something about the car speeded up, and it was at this perfectly timed moment, and that was the second shot. That was the one that killed Kennedy. I'd never heard this, but apparently it's a legit theory, and there's a whole book
Has
about it.
that just come out recently? Is that part of, is that what you're saying? Like this just emerged in the last couple of years?
No, I think that's been around for a while. I'd never heard it. Yeah, wow. I think since like the 90s or 80s or 90s or something.
I can see why you'd want to cover that up, because you always want to cover up friendly fire situations.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You know what I mean?
It's embarrassing.
Like, yeah, it's embarrassing.
That's embarrassing. Oh, the whole thing is so strange. You know, there's a real crackpotty theory that the driver of the car shot him with a dart that had shellfish toxin. That'd been dipped in a shellfish toxin.
Oh,
you ever heard that?
Really? I have not heard that.
And there's some whole theory because you see the guy turn around, the driver turn around, his arm comes up in some weird way. So there's all these sorts of people who have analyzed.
It sounds like
a
Sherlock Holmes story.
It does. It sounds so ridiculous. But that's the thing with these things. They become so, they sound like something from a Sherlock Holmes thing. They sound impossibly complicated and crazy like that.
But that's what happens when you have like there are these traditions where governments do lie to their people. I mean, Plato in the Republic, he says like you have to have this he calls it the happy lie.
Right.
He says this is kind of creepy because it's kind of eugenics, but he's saying you want to mate the most excellent athletes together, but you can't leave that to chance. So you make up a lottery that looks like it's chance, but you rig the lottery so that the smartest people are mating together and the most athletic people.
That's bizarre.
But they don't know it. I know, it's totally bizarre. It's in the Republic.
Really? They don't know it because you don't want them to know it because they might have a problem.
Yeah.
With it. Oh my God.
But you could blame your bad luck instead of the state. And that's in the Republic.
Oh my God. Plato, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, there we go.
Kind of a like a proto-fascist.
Yeah, totally. That whole thing. The Republic sounds like kind of proto-fascist, like the.
People have suggested, in the early days of COVID, the government was saying stuff, about masks that wasn't entirely true, but it was helpful. And then it makes conspiracies much more easy to believe because governments do this,
Well, I think now the internet and stuff, it makes them really easy to believe. Yeah. I mean, it's like there's so much, anybody can put anything out there now. So it makes it really easy. It's interesting. All interesting stuff. Fascinating. Anyway, thank you, Chip.
Thank you, Chip.
Thank you,
Good
Chip,
letter.
out there in Texas somewhere. Old Chip. Fantastic. These were great.
Yeah.
And fun. As always, really good. Keep them coming in, please. Don't stop. Don't stop.
Don't stop. Never stop.
Yep. Don't stop. Bring them in, send them in, and we'll read them and we'll discuss them. And in the meantime, till next time, what do we do, Steve?
Wag on.
That's it.
I think we wag
That's
on.
it. That's what we do, buddy. We wag on. Wag on, weirdos.
Chinwag is a production of Treefort Media and Touchy Feely Films. Hosted and executive produced by Paul Giamatti and Stephen Asma. Executive producers for Treefort are Kelly Garner and Lisa Ammerman. Dan Carey is executive producer for Touchy Feely. Our series producer is Rachel Whitley Bernstein. Original theme music by Luke Top, with additional music by Via Mardot. Oscar Guido is our executive in charge of production. Tom Monahan is head of audio for Treefort. Audio production supervision by Matt Dyson. Editing and mixing by Jeff Neal. Animation created by Alex Sokol. Research assistance by Aidan Brooks. Lastly, for more information, go to chinwagpod.fm and find us on Instagram or TikTok at chinwagpod or on Twitter at chinwag_pod.